Good evening. You're watching the Conscious Communication Thursday night live coaching stream with Green Elephant. Our mission here is to empower kindness and increase collective intelligence in all forms of interpersonal communication. And for tonight, you might actually be tuning in as an employer looking to hire new people. Lucky you if that's the case. Or you might even be a job seeker looking for a new job. Either way, welcome. My name is Esteve, and the question for tonight is, how can you influence consciously through your writing? I'll be taking you through step-by-step demo of how to color code a job posting from a website with the lens of influence communication. And there will be a little short recap before we go, in case some of you watching haven't ever heard of the green, blue, red. And then I'll be jumping in with a shared screen on what that means. Green, blue, red is actually a color coding framework that's not a personality model, and it's been around now for a number of years, since the TEDx that was putting it into the public domain that I did in Turku. There has been now some videos in a YouTube channel which explain the basic principles of the three colors, which are, you know, focusing on myself, focusing on the other, or on the common action. And then there's an infographic at the end which highlights how you can use that in the right proportion, in the right order. So this is where, if you need to go back and refresh your memory or actually learn a bit more about this, you can see it. And also, we've introduced in this particular video something called the head-up display, which is something that will actually be used here to analyze the communication in 3 levels. So it has, a bit like if you're wearing a pair of augmented reality glasses, a sort of hypothetical view of what's going on at a verbal level, non-verbal and intention level in the communication that's happening. Now for today, because this is writing, I'm only going to be focusing on the top level of the head-up display, which is the verbal communication, and I will be bringing a little bit of perspective on the other 2 levels as we go along. A couple of weeks ago, we introduced in the various social media channels, in LinkedIn, also in Instagram, this idea of the periodic table of communication as a way of understanding that chemistry, metaphorically, that there is between people, and breaking it down into some elements of communication of those 3 colors, the green, the blue, and the red. And from this model that we opened up in the previous video, and by the way, welcome Anu, and thank you for adding those links into the chat. We have Anu here kindly helping me on the side with the chat, and there will be a few video links that we'll be posting as we go along. So the periodic table was introduced, so I'm not going to go through it again today. We will be picking out elements from this periodic table as we go along with the color coding. So what's tonight's theme? A couple of people have been actually asking me about writing and color coded. There's all sorts of things that you can color code, from emails that you write to chat messages in Slack, and of course the copy of a website, the copy of the ads, the political speeches, all of those things can be color coded. Now, of course, in this streaming, there's certain things that I shouldn't be color coding, but anything in public domain is fair use, and therefore I'm now using a website which was brought to my attention in LinkedIn. And I wanted to sort of highlight what I initially got interested in. They had a really nice style of copywriting. Plus, it's a green energy company called Bulb, which is focusing on a very simple value prop of renewable energy that's affordable with no hidden costs, essentially. And they're hiring in their London headquarters a position. So before we go into the actual job posting, I wanted to give you a tiny bit of context about the actual website so that you can see who is the actual poster. In the color coding, we're going to be looking at the employer from the point of view of Bulb. So we assume that the person writing it is writing on behalf of Bulb, and the green, if we're anchoring the color coding, is for the potential qualified candidates. Otherwise, we're not qualified. Therefore, it's going to be, everything is going to be blue. So to make sure that we're talking green is green for a potentially qualified candidate, and red is the action that might be in common. So for example, next interview or an interview or next conversation. So that's how we're color coding. And now if we go back to the actual website, a couple of little things that stood out in their copy was that they're using a big sentence here, no tears, no tricks, which could be construed as blue if we color code from their perspective. But it can also be very green for anybody who's used an energy company and been tricked. Anna's been color coding some phone scripts recently from people doing these, sales calls where they're trying to sell you something with a hidden intention, and often it is that. It's tricks, marketing tricks, sales tricks to sort of get you to buy to the next level and not really know what you're buying. So their value prop is actually quite green because they're saying we're not going to trick you, and which is something that belongs to a lot of people, therefore it's green. So that was a nice little green bit of their copy. And then there was another element which is something that you see a lot in websites nowadays, is this what they call the RTB, the reason to believe, the fact that they're trustworthy. So here they have their 2 stamps, Trustpilot, accredited business, the bottom left. And that's obviously, if we color code that, just to give you a bit of a sense of where we're going with this color coding, that's obviously blue because it belongs to them. It's their degree of trustworthy, their expertise. It's like their LinkedIn profile plus. As a brand, it belongs to them to be trustworthy, even though the underlying intention is to build trust, which is green. So there's a bit of those 2 different colors going on. Now, if we go to the actual text itself, please do, if you any one moment in the color coding not understand why this is the color I'm color coding, please interrupt, or please bring in a question into the chat. I'll happily answer it as we go along. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through this text sentence by sentence and color code with these different 3 colors, which I've put on the right as a little reminder for you. Blue being the recruiter, in this case, bulb. Okay. So there's 5 pages. Some of them are going to be very quick to color code because they're entirely one color. But let's start with this first page. Hi, we're Bulb. Nice to meet you. Who does this belong to? This obviously is belonging to Bulb. It's them. Then they're telling them that it's nice to meet. So even though it could be a kind thing and a pleasant thing to receive, it's still very much blue. Belongs to Bulb. So Bulb says we're working remotely to protect our team during the coronavirus lockdown. Okay, so some would say that could be green because everybody's doing that, but they're still informing of what they're doing. But we're still hiring. We are still hiring. So what color would that be? Blue? If it belongs to them, are they informing? Yes, absolutely. They're informing of what belongs to them. They are hiring, so it's blue. So if you're looking for a new role and you're happy to take part in a remote interview, so this is where, if we assume that we're qualified, yes, I'm looking for a new role, and yes, I'm happy to take part. So this belongs to me as a potential candidate, and therefore I would color code that green. Read on is a kind of an order. It's not a very strong order, but it's like read on. It means that is for you, continue. So it's red. It's about common action. Please go on. Bulb is the UK's biggest green energy supplier, providing affordable renewable energy to homes and businesses across the UK. Informing. It's nothing that belongs to the reader unless they've been a customer before, which is possible as well. So our mission is to help people lower their energy bills and reduce their carbon impact at the same time. Founded in 2015, we were named the UK's fastest growing private company in 2018 and 2019, and we're still limboing up. I had to actually, honestly, had to look that word up, limboing up. That's quite a blue way of using. Again, all of that is blue. Limboing is a sort of way of saying I'm stretching myself, getting myself ready. It's used a lot in PR and political rhetorics. Gives us a little hint of the copywriter's background, probably. Naturally, we're an accredited living wage employer. We've been picked as one of the LinkedIn's top 25 UK tech startups to work for. So here, what's interesting is that they're seemingly going towards talking green to the they're assuming and projecting that the reader, the person who potentially could be employed, would be wanting to have one of these great tech startups. So I would, just to be giving them the benefit of the doubt, the credit of intention, I'm going to put this in green, and then somebody's going to go, no, this is actually entirely blue, depending on who's the person actually reading that. So it's kind of, let's give them that 25 UK top startups, just in case we assume that the candidate has been looking at those lists. There we go. That means we believe in using business as a force for good. Now, if you're talking to a millennial hire, that's quite likely going to be green, but in some cases it would be blue. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt and the credit of intention here. We are growing our user research team and are looking for an experienced and user researcher, mid-level to senior. Okay, so mid-level to senior, I would put green, because it's sort of the question on my mind. If I am actually in that bucket, I'm going to be thinking, is it how experienced? So all of this I would say is blue, and then there's a little hint of green in the middle, to work closely with our product teams. As the voice of our members, you'll deliver insights to help us create high impact products, enabling millions of people to reduce their bills, lower their carbon emissions, and be a little bit kinder to the planet. Nice little touch of friendly and slightly more casual tone of voice there, but it's still relatively all blue. So this first piece, as you can see, is predominantly blue with a little bit of touches of green and red. Let's go through the next page. In this role, and then they bullet point all the different parts of your potential job description as a candidate. So in this role, you will. So what color is that? If we're taking green, blue, red as a starting point, obviously this is blue, because they're just describing what this role will be, and you don't know this, otherwise you wouldn't need to read this job ad. So all of this is blue. Let's double check if there's any little bits of green in here. Work on some of the most important, partner with design, plan, dive deeper. How do people feel about carbon offsetting? Those questions, we could give them a green angle if we're saying that those questions might be on the mind of a candidate, but I think that's a bit of a stretch. Research across multiple domains, share the results of your research, be the voice, explore new ways. All of that is blue. It's basically informing. So let's go on to the next page. Page 3, at Bulb, we want to hire people with the experience necessary to get going quickly, but we know that attitude and potential can be just as important. So I added here green when I first read it through, because here are some of the things we're looking for. I think it's very much putting out loud what might be on the candidate's mind when they're reading it. Otherwise, all of that is again an expression of what belongs to Bulb. We want, this is important to us. We know that attitude and potential can just be important as well. If this sounds like you, that would be potentially green as well. We'd love, blue. For you, we'd love is blue because it belongs to Bulb, and then for you to send us an application is therefore red because it's about the common action. Please send me that application. So they're using the order so far of green, blue, red in the opposite way. They're starting with blue, then a bit of green, and then red. One way that text could be clearer would be to start with the green, what belongs to the candidate, then go to the blue, and then go to the red. Let's go on and see what else they've written. About you. Well, that's green. That's about the candidate. So the candidate needs to have a solid, let's assume that I, as a reading candidate, I'm ticking all these boxes. Yes, I have a solid academic background with master's qualifications, at least 2 years of hands-on experience being embedded in a product team preferred, and so on. So all of these are listing what their wish list for the candidate would be. So if I'm qualified, they would be green. And then we go to benefits. Now this is probably the bit that is one of the most interesting for the applicant, for the candidate. Why do I want to join this particular workplace? So benefits is clearly going to be green. Benefits, be part of a growing technology startup and help shape the future of energy. Well, if I'm into startups, yes, that's green. unless I'm afraid of the chaos that startups bring. Collaborative, flexible, and friendly environment. Well, who doesn't want that? So you could say it's green, but quite high level. Competitive salary, discretionary share options and bonus, 33 days holiday a year, and the option to buy up to 5 more. Yeah, so all of these benefits are things that they're looking at differentiation from other workplaces, and hopefully they're green for you as a candidate if you're a candidate there. So quite a lot of green, but at the end. So that kind of, if we now look back to the beginning, if you're actually a recruiter and you're writing these, an invitation for you is to think there of the order in which this reads. Even though, in fact, when you're applying for a job, you're kind of forced to read through, just like the recruiter is forced to read through hundreds of CVs, the candidate is also forced to read through hundreds of job applications. And so the more you can hook them at the beginning, the more you can talk green to them at the beginning, the more likely it is that they'll actually engage in your job description more fully and really do a good job of answering that. So one way is to start with green. Second thing is, so in the order here, it could even just be putting some of the benefits of the job earlier on in the text, for instance. The other thing is the percentage of green. Now here, obviously, they have to inform of their blue. That's a necessary. I wouldn't want to apply to a company that only talks green in their job ad because I have no idea where I'm applying. So you need some blue. The question is how much of the blue. They probably have more than enough here, bullet points, for a person to start answering this with. So I would even argue that you could go down to 3 to 5 bullet points here and make it really clear what those 3 to 5, instead of having this long list, which are actually quite difficult for a candidate to answer. So to make it more tangible, they might have 3 to 5 buckets with a sort of a very short title that might open up example of what that means, like they've done with the questions. So that's one way that they could actually make the blue more impactful. So then now if we pause here a second, we've been through the basic ad. Are there any questions so far? We have Aspen River, we have Aero. Before we go into looking at this from the other perspective, which is from the point of view of the person applying as a candidate, we would then shift the color coding and look at it, blue being me as a candidate, green is what belongs to the future potential employer, bulb. So what could we do? Well, first thing is to start with bullet points. When you're going to be writing a structured text, I find it often easier to color code and structure it into those 3 buckets. So blue, if I'm now, in this case, actually this would need to be modified. Blue would be the candidate, and green would be the bulb, the future employer. So if we look at it like that, the first thing that we tend to do is we have cover letters, we have CVs. As candidates, we have a whole long list of blue things, our communication skills, our languages, our technical skills, our qualifications, and so on. And the challenge is often to shorten a CV or shorten a resume or a bio or even a cover letter to reflect what is really needed from the other side. So rather than listing those, you could start by listing the green that you find out from the actual job. So what is bulb needing to know to be reassured and potentially go to the next step of an interview? Well, there's what you know from the job posting that was above. So you can obviously take a whole list of, and this is where it would be easier if they had actually simplified it into 3 to 5 buckets. What would be the role description elements here? You could take those and take 3 to 5 of those and start to talk about how you can do those, your experience. And when you look at the second list, which is about you, they're telling already what they're looking for. So if you already know that these things are checked, so you can just re-express exactly what they have with your own words and bring the proof of your experience in those particular wordings, then it becomes extremely green for them because they're reading a reassuring summary of what they know they need. So that's how you can start, and of course that's only looking at the job posting. Often candidates who are looking and trying to do a lot of volume are forgetting that you can also go into their website find out a little bit more on their blog about things that they say in social media. Also looking at them in the news, if they're a large company, what's been put out there. Has there been any scandals? Has there been any media releases, official PR statements? And all of that gives you a sense of the company as an organization or being communicating to you. One of the touch points is the one that you've just seen, which is the interview recruitment. But there's a whole load of other things that you can find out about to be green from these other sources. So this is things that you can list there as bullet points that really matter. And then this helps you to filter what is the most important in the blue. Then you don't need to just list your blue. You can just write your blue as an answer to their needed green here. So it becomes more like a question and answer game rather than having to list your qualification and then answer their questions. You would probably want to restructure it like this, which is to take what the key topics they have. Let's say they have topic 1 and topic 2 and so on. And you would start to bring in your blue elements, my strength for that position on this particular topic 1, and my strength in that position on this particular topic 2, and you start to answer with your blue. And then you have a very simple, very understandable and clear way of building your cover letter to that. With the same, obviously, the interview is the end game that you're trying to aim for here. And at the end, a last formulation for that, which is like obviously where you appeal to them contacting you again. So that's essentially how you could take the color coding from the periodic table on both sides of this, from the actual recruiter and from the candidate side. A few rules of thumb when you're doing this. The most difficult thing is the color coding of text without thinking of the intentions. Often, I get approached by data scientists who say, well, it'd be great, we could actually just color code everything with machine learning nowadays. It would be so much easier if we just color coded everything by a bot, right? Unfortunately, technology is not ready for that yet. We don't really understand the non-verbals with automation. We don't particularly understand the intentions, even though there is the beginning of this work with sentiment analysis going on. There is a remarkable little amount of know-how on how to interpret those 3 levels of communication. 3 levels being the verbal, which is what's written, the non-verbal, which might be, for example, the way it's said. Even when you write this, there's ways of communicating sentiment, feelings like emojis, caps, the grammatical formulations that actually give you a sense of the feeling. But then what about the intention? You can't know for sure in a text what the intention is. Just like in face-to-face when people don't say it, there is just speculation. And this is where misunderstandings happen. And that is why text is so misleading, because we think that text is giving us this sense of control over the communication because we can rewrite it. But actually, it's quite the opposite. You don't have that feedback loop of knowing if your intentions have been understood or if there's a checkpoint of intentions. So let's look at the intentions that could be from a color coding perspective here. If I now show you the periodic table again, we have a number of intentions on the bottom row here. So when you write a job ad, what is the color of intention is going to be blue and red usually, because your intention is trying to influence people to come to work for you, the right candidates hopefully. But there's also a blue element, which is wanting to show your corporate ego, which is also called your brand, in a way that's more attractive than other employers. So there is very much a blue and red intentionality behind this at the bottom of all of this communication. Could say it's purple, blue and red. So purple intention. Now, how might you bring some of the green intention as a company hiring? Well, you have a few options. Building trust is a good idea. building trust is one of the first things that humans need before they can ever do any transaction, whether it's for buying, but also for working together, even more importantly. So how might you build trust in that first touch point of a job ad is a question that you might want to ask yourself. One way is to sort of express that trust is one of your corporate values. They've been bringing their values in the website, but it's very difficult to say this in a text. So this is where written communication has its limits. The non-verbals are very difficult to communicate without having that face-to-face, which is why intuitively so many people are wanting to still have that rich face-to-face contact and hate writing, is because of this lack of the intention. But you can always write your intention through your mission statement, which they did, or through other forms of upfront intentions, which then makes it less manipulative. So writing is tricky in that you don't often see the intention, so it's particularly important that you pay attention to formulating what might seem obvious to you and stating that in writing form. Tonight, we've been through now one color coding. In the future, I'd like to do more color coding like this head-up display, and it's been something that we've developed over the years, and we call this the head-up display. Here you can see Anu role-playing with Andy a particular scene in a cafe. What I would like to do more of in the future is to bring examples from YouTube, from your life, from places that are in public domain, could even be some documentaries or political speeches. If you have anything that you would like to color code that would be needing a bit of clarity in terms of what is the influence going on in that communication, this will be the forum that we can do it on Thursday nights. So this is the end of tonight's session. It was a short color coding. Happy to do more. Please fire whichever ones you want as examples. Meanwhile, stay tuned. Next streaming will be Sunday evening. Anu and I will be doing our focus on relationships and family on the same topic. And we'll be announcing that in the usual channels what the topic of the day will be. Meanwhile, have a great end of week, and hope to see some more green copy out there in LinkedIn and everywhere else. Good night.